Women are the best patients. They listen, they show up, they ask good questions, they write stuff down, right? Period tracking apps. Women use them and they keep logs of stuff. Men, they don't even know where their socks are, right? And if we as a species were relying on men to be organized and reproduce, we'd be in trouble. So taking care of women is really where it's at. One common misconception is people think they need to have sex after they ovulate. If you have sex after you ovulate, you're doing the rhythm method. You're contracepting. You're actively not getting pregnant. You want to have sex before ovulation or on the day of ovulation at the very latest.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Through with a Splash of Tea, a podcast where conversation is key. And today we have a very special guest. Today we have Pietro Bortoletto. Pietro is a distinguished reproductive endocrinologist and the director of reproductive surgery at Terra Fertility. Born in São Paulo, Brazil, and raised in Miami, he has an incredible academic journey. He graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in neuroscience, chemistry, and anthropology. Well, the rest I'll let Pietro tell you guys. But currently, in addition to his current role, Dr. Bortoletto serves as a clinical instructor at Harvard Med and is on the staff at Beth Israel. Today, we'll dive into his expertise in reproductive medicine, the evolving landscape of fertility, and his unique journey in his impactful field. But first things first, I have to say thank you very much, Dr. Pietro, for being here.
Cass, it's cool to be out of the office, out of the operating room, and talking to people about what we do and how we help people build families. Yes. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so I like to start at the very beginning. I think people's backgrounds mold a lot of who they are today. Yeah. So I need you to tell me everything. I want to know your family dynamic growing up, as well as if your parents are still together. Was it a two-parent household, your siblings, all of it?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Brazil. I know I have this really crazy long Italian name, but my dad's Brazilian, my dad's Italian, my mom's Brazilian. They met in Brazil. I was born there, but when I was 3-4 years old, I moved over to the United States. A lot of Brazilian immigrants in the US. We landed in Miami. I was raised in Miami. I was in Miami before Miami was cool. Now everyone thinks Miami's cool and everyone moved there. I was there before it was cool. I'm one of the OG Miami people. And I stayed local. I went to high school there. I went to college there. I lived at home in college because college was 5 minutes away. I went to the University of Miami. It was me, my younger brother, my mom, my dad. And after 4 years of college and living at home, I was like, all right, it's time to spread these wings. That's when we left. And that's when I moved over to Chicago. I did medical school there at Northwestern. After Chicago for 4 years, I came to Boston. I was here for residency. I did my OBGYN training at the Brigham and Mass General.
Wait.
Oh, am I moving too quick?
Yeah. What? Okay, we have to know about Chicago. Why Chicago from Miami? Such a big jump.
I didn't own a winter coat, and it was about time. Here's a fun story. I showed up to my first day of medical school, and it was August in Chicago, and it was 62. And I went to the winter coat store on Michigan Avenue, and I bought a winter coat. And the next day I wore it to class because it was 58. And there were people in shorts and T-shirts in class the next day. And they're like, you must not be from around here. And I was not.
My goodness.
I love Chicago.
Do you?
Have you ever met anyone who's lived in Chicago for 4 years and said they hated it? Nope. Nope. People love Chicago. Chicago's the best big city in the United States.
That's a big statement.
Everything New York has. Cheaper than New York. Great food scene. Lots of culture. And lots of flights in and out. Big up Chicago.
Okay. All right. You kind of did that with that one. Mm-hmm. But the cold.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
Boston's not too far, though. You know.
Okay, all right. I'll give you that one. Okay, so we did Northeastern for 4 years.
Northwestern. Northeastern's the one in Chicago. That happens all the time. So Northwestern's in Chicago. And then I came to Boston for residency. Okay. At some point in med school, no young man grows up thinking they want to be an OBGYN. It finds you. So when I was in medical school, you rotate through all the rotations. And I was like, I'm not going to be an OBGYN. That's something women do. I'm not going to do that. And I do my OBGYN rotation. I'm like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the only field of medicine that helps people create new life. Everything else you're dealing with illness, death, dying, suffering. OBGYN was that one bright spot where you were bringing new life into the world. And I was so taken by it. And as I was doing my rotation, I spent a couple of days with the infertility doctors and the light bulb went off. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And knowing that really early on in medical school was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because you had a very clear vision of what came next and what came after that and where you wanted to end up. The curse was you still had to do all the other stuff, right? You still had to rotate through general surgery. You still had to go to primary care clinic. You're like, but I already know what I want to do. Let's move this along. So I was lucky enough to come to Boston for my training though. So when I left Northwestern, I matched an OB/GYN residency here at the Brigham and Mass General, two really wonderful hospitals, a really outstanding training program. OB/GYN training is 4 years. You got to deliver babies. You got to do hysterectomies. You got to do all of it. And only after your 4 years of OB/GYN training do you actually get to do your infertility training. So then I did 3 years of infertility fellowship. That's how you become a subspecialist and you're allowed to practice reproductive medicine. That was at a very unfortunate time. That was during the pandemic in New York City.
What?
Yeah. So I moved to New York in 2019. The first 6 months were awesome. Absolutely loved it. Went to Broadway shows, went out to dinner with my wife. We had a 1-year-old. And then March came on and New York shut down. Times Square emptied out. There were tent cities with hospitals in Central Park. It was a really crazy time for a good year and a half. And the last 2 years in New York were a little less fun than the first 6 months. And then when training was done, we're like, all right, I think we're over in New York. We're ready. We're ready for a yard. We're ready for suburbia. And we moved back to Boston. And I live in Arlington now and absolutely love it. And we're not moving. My wife's tired of moving. My kids, I have 2 kids now and they're tired of moving. So we're staying put. Chicago's home or Boston's home.
Oh my goodness.
Whirlwind, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so how old were you when you figured out that you wanted to be an infertility doctor? When the light bulb struck?
It was my 3rd year of medical school. First 2 years of medical school, you do in-class work. You get lectures. You learn about different things. You do your anatomy labs.
Okay.
The last 2 years is where you actually spend time in the hospital seeing the different specialties. And it was literally my second rotation was OB/GYN. And I'm like, what? This is it?
This is it.
This is it. So I found out pretty early. Most people, it takes them a little bit to find out what they want to do. They go through a year or 2 of clinical work before they kind of have the light bulb moment.
And what was the feedback from your support system? So your friends, your family, all that.
You can imagine what it was like telling your dad, I think I want to be an OB/GYN. That's never a conversation everyone grows up thinking they're going to have. And then imagine telling your buddies from back home, I think I want to be an OB/GYN. So there's a lot of explaining what about it, right? Because times have changed. Back in the day, most OB/GYNs were men. Now it's actually flipped. Most OB/GYNs are women. There's cultural reasons, social reasons. There's a lot of good reasons for that being the case. But people always had questions like, why does a guy want to be an OB/GYN? And for me, it was not so much being an OB/GYN. It was taking care of the patients that OB/GYNs get to take care of. Women are the best patients. They listen. They show up. They ask good questions. They write stuff down, right? Period tracking apps. Women use them and they keep logs of stuff. Men, they don't even know where their socks are, right? And if we as a species were relying on men to be organized and reproduce, we'd be in trouble. So taking care of women is really where it's at.
Wow. Okay, so you recently opened Terra. I would like to talk a little bit about the idea around that and doing that and transitioning from Boston IVF to that.
I think everyone's a bit of an entrepreneur deep down inside. And whether or not you find that out about yourself and you muster up the courage to do it, I think that's sometimes the difference between taking the leap and not taking the leap. And for us, it was an opportunity for me, my 2 colleagues, Dr. Dennis Vaughn and Dr. Emily Seidler, to kind of create and craft this experience that we wanted for patients. We know that being a patient is really hard. Calling during business hours, leaving a voicemail, waiting to hear back, that kind of grinds people's gears. Having uncertainty about when your follow-up visit's going to be, not being able to get the doctor on the line. We thought that we could do a little bit better. And what we decided to do was let's put it to the test. Let's open up our own practice that really doubles down on transparency for patients. Tell people how much it's going to cost before they show up if they don't have insurance. Transparency, talking about also ease of access, right? Speak to people in their own language. I speak Portuguese and Spanish. I'm one of the few doctors in the country who does infertility that speaks those languages. Boston, Massachusetts, there's so many Spanish and Portuguese speakers. I think 12% of the population speaks Spanish or Portuguese as their primary language. Imagine being able to have that tough conversation about sex and babies and reproduction in your own language rather than through a translator. That was something that was really important to us. And then just make an experience that's going to be modern and easy. Back when I used to have hair, I never got a haircut when I had to call and make an appointment. I would only do it if I could schedule it online, reschedule it online, cancel it online. We want the fertility experience to be like that too. We want to empower people to figure out when they can come and allow them to just use the technology that we use in other aspects of our life to help make being a patient easier.
I want to dive into the fertility experience as a whole for a second. So let's go to the very beginning. So for people who don't know what IVF is, what is IVF?
IVF is a really powerful tool, but it's also kind of an umbrella term. It can mean a bunch of different things. So why do we use IVF? In general, if you're under the age of 35, we give people 12 months of sex without success before calling them infertile. If you're over the age of 35, that's 6 months. Once you're kind of crossing that threshold, the recommendation is to go seek out your primary care doctor, your OBGYN, sometimes even an infertility doctor to help understand what's going on, why. Statistically, most people should get pregnant within those time periods. And if you're falling into that group that's having a hard time, you need to do the investigations, right? If you have a male partner, you want to check a semen analysis. If it's a female partner, you want to check the fallopian tubes, the uterus, some hormones, the ovaries. And once you kind of understand what's preventing people from getting pregnant, then you have a bunch of tools at your disposal that you could use. Sometimes it's easy stuff, oral medication to help them ovulate regularly. People have PCOS, they don't ovulate regularly. That's sometimes a really easy fix. Sometimes the sperm's not so good and you have to do an insemination to put sperm inside the uterus. And that's how we also help same-sex couples and single parents by choice. But probably our most powerful, but also most intensive tool is IVF. IVF is the process where we're giving people injections at night in their belly for about 12 days. Little needles, not big, but the injections in the belly stimulate the ovaries to grow lots of eggs all at once. In a normal menstrual cycle, you grow 1 egg a month. IVF works because we try to get the ovaries to do a little bit more than just one. And during the course of those 12 weeks, 12 days, there's a few visits for blood work, a few visits for ultrasound, just to kind of monitor our progress, make sure we're doing things safely. But at the end of those 12 days, it's a quick 15-minute procedure called an egg retrieval. Happens under light anesthesia, no breathing tube, not general anesthesia. We use a little needle to go into the ovaries and take eggs out. Once those eggs are out of the body, that's when it's called IVF. You're fertilizing that egg in the laboratory rather than allowing sperm and egg to mix in the body. Sperm finds an egg that fertilizes successfully. You get embryos. Those embryos are then grown in the IVF laboratory for about a week. At the end of that week, that's where the magic happens. That's where you have an opportunity to do things with the embryo. You could return one into someone's uterus to help them get pregnant right away. It's called a fresh embryo transfer. But I also have the opportunity to freeze embryos. And if I'm freezing embryos, I can save them for later. I can save them until you're done with chemo or radiation. I can save them for that second baby that you hope to have 5 years from now. I can also genetically test them and learn something about that embryo at the time of freezing it to help avoid passing disease on to the next generation. Sickle cell, hemophilia, Tay-Sachs. These are all conditions, cystic fibrosis. These are all conditions that we can prevent through IVF and genetic testing of embryos. So IVF is a big umbrella term for a bunch of different things, but it's probably our most powerful tool to help people become pregnant.
And how do you deal with the day? Well, I don't know if this is day to day, but the emotions of it all, right? Because by the time that a couple walks into your office, I feel like they've tried and tried and tried, and they kind of feel like they've tried it all. So how do you deal with that?
Very sensitive to the fact that I'm meeting people a year into this journey, right? I'm not starting from scratch with them. They've already done starting from scratch for a year. They've been buying the ovulation predictor kits. They've been crying when they get their period 2 weeks after ovulation. So when they're coming to see me, they're looking for a game plan. I think people really like having a game plan. We're going to do this testing first, and we're going to see each other in 2 weeks to review the results. People's shoulders start to drop. They like having a game plan. And then once we have the results back, we get to talk a little bit about what's next. And people really like having a treatment plan now, where we're trying to figure out, based on what we learned, what do you need? I think the minute you put a name to what's going on and you come up with a game plan to help overcome it, people really start to get excited again. Because after 6 to 12 months of trying, they think it's never going to happen. They start going on the internet and reading about all these therapies. They start taking advice from friends and family, like, oh, just stop stressing. Once you stop stressing, you'll get pregnant. I wish it was that easy. For a lot of people, it's not. But fertility it's a process. It's not easy to be infertile. It's not easy to be an infertility patient. It takes a lot out of you. And unfortunately, you end up seeing a lot of stuff. You end up seeing kind of disagreements. You end up seeing sexual dysfunction, pelvic pain, stuff that kind of comes up, and sex becomes not fun anymore. And it becomes something that you have to put on the calendar and like, cancel that meeting. I'm ovulating. I need you home tonight, you know?
A task.
Correct. It's less fun.
Yeah.
So it's our job to manage a little bit of all of that for patients. We call it gynecology.
Ooh.
You got to do a little bit of the medicine, but also a little of the psychiatry and make sure that people are in a good spot while you're taking care of them.
I want to discuss patients. I want you to tell me their names, and I'm just kidding.
HIPAA prevents me from doing that.
Yes. Are there any patients that have like really stood out to you with, I don't know, in your time, in your practice, that have really just, for any reason, other patients? Yeah.
I got 2 good stories that come to the top of my mind. So a big part of my practice is taking care of men and women who are diagnosed with cancer. Cancer therapies are super advanced. In the modern era, we can help people overcome lots of different cancers. But the problem is chemotherapy, really good at killing cancer cells, so really good at damaging the eggs that a woman's born with and the sperm that a man's born with. And if someone's about to undergo chemotherapy, radiation, surgery to their testicles or their ovaries, we have the tools to be able to freeze eggs, freeze sperm, freeze embryos before treatment so that they can do their treatment, overcome their cancer. And when they have all this life to look forward to after treatment is behind them, they can still have the opportunity to become pregnant. There's nothing worse than having cancer, needing chemo, and then being infertile afterwards. It's like the double whammy. So the patients that kind of stick with me the most are the ones who get that crappy diagnosis at 32 that they have breast cancer. They have to make some really tough decisions about surgery and chemo. And the whole time they just got married or engaged like 6 months ago and they haven't started building their family yet. Being able to talk to them about life after cancer and making a plan for freezing eggs, sperm, or embryos before treatment. It's one of my very favorite patient groups.
That's a double whammy like no other, because I didn't even think about that.
Cool.
Cancer and infertile, like.
Yeah. So the biggest population where it matters the most are the young adults with cancer diagnoses. If you're 45, 50 getting a cancer diagnosis, your reproductive years are largely behind you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're 18-year-old who has a bone cancer, you're a college kid who gets diagnosed with leukemia, those people have a lot of life ahead of them. And they may not have even thought about having kids, but we don't want them to miss out on the opportunity to have children in the future if they want to.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Do you think that the way that the trajectory of less young people having children, do you think that that will affect the IVF industry?
So I think it has affected the IVF industry. So if we were to rewind the clock 30 years ago, the average age where people were having their first kid was in their early 20s to mid 20s.
That's terrifying.
Now that number is in the early to mid 30s, their first kid. It's a big shift. And that's for a bunch of different reasons, right? People's access to education improved. People's opportunities outside of the house improved. We started moving around. It was a lot easier to have kids in your 20s when your parents lived next door. You lived in the same building as your parents. Now we went away for school, met someone, and moved across the country, and your mom's far away. Do you really want to have that kid while you're living away from your mom? No, you probably want to wait a little bit. But as a result, what that's meant is that we are pushing back people's reproductive age at the time that they're having kids. A woman's born with a very small number of eggs at the beginning of life. And that number gets smaller for everyone. Pretty stable in your teens, pretty stable in your 20s. But by the time you get to your mid to late 30s, you're kind of on that roller coaster. That number is getting smaller pretty fast. That's one reason that fertility treatments become less successful as you get older. You just have less for us to work with. But probably most importantly is the quality of those eggs really starts to change. So you were born with all those eggs. They've been in your body for 20 years, 30 years, 35 years, 40 years. They get beat up a little bit. They take on some genetic damage so that when you go to try to make those eggs into embryos, they're not going to be as normal. They're not going to be as good. And you're going to be a lot less efficient at getting pregnant. So we see a lot of those patients who went to college, went to grad school, got married, sometimes got divorced on their second husband, and now they show up and they're 41. They're like, all right, I'm ready to do it. I'm like, oh, I wish you were ready to do it a decade ago. But thankfully, we have tools that can help a lot of people to be able to build families at all kinds of different ages with their own eggs, with donor sperm, sometimes even someone else's uterus.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you recommend freezing your eggs?
So here's the tough thing about freezing eggs is the sooner you do it, the more cost effective it is. A lot of really good data to suggest that if you're under the age of 33, that's when it's most cost effective. You get your biggest bang for your buck. You have the most eggs and you have the best quality eggs. But that doesn't mean you can't freeze eggs over the age of 33. So most patients who I'm freezing eggs for are in their mid to late 30s and are just in different periods of time along that relationship curve, right? Like just got out of a long-term relationship, just finished grad school and haven't started dating yet. And people need some time to figure that out and don't want to rush into a bad relationship just so that they can have kids because they're worried about getting old. I think egg freezing is really powerful at many different stages in life. But if I could wave my magic wand, I'd tell everyone to do it under the age of 33 because that's when they're going to save the most amount of money and be the most successful in the future.
Okay. All right. I won't lie to you. I've considered freezing my eggs before. This might be a little TMI, but you're an IVF doctor, not really.
There's nothing TMI in my office.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've probably seen it all.
All of it.
I've considered freezing my eggs, but then might sound dumb, but then I was like, okay, well, if I stay down this path of like not wanting any kids, like what are they going to do with my eggs?
Oh, that's such a good question. People ask that all the time. Yeah. So when you freeze your eggs, they come out of the body, they go into a freezer, and then they're stuck in time, meaning they're not getting older. So while your age may be advancing, those eggs are the age they were when they came out of your body. Mm-hmm. So when we take them out of the freezer, they're going to behave that age, which is really cool. You may be 10 years later, you may be 40 something, but these are 30 something eggs. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But those eggs are always your property. Okay. Meaning you get to decide what to do with them in the future. About 35 to 40% of people come back and use them. The other group of people never end up using them because oftentimes they don't need them. They get pregnant on their own. Sometimes they decided not to have kids and they just never come back to use them. And oftentimes people are coming back to use them for second kids, right? They had that first one, no problem. They breastfeed. A couple of years later, now they're 40 something working on that second kid and they're having a really hard time. They have some eggs that were frozen at age 30 something that are going to wind back the clock for them and give them a lot of success. But ultimately, whatever you decide to do with your eggs, you get to decide. You can keep them on ice for forever. You're paying some monthly storage fees that can add up for sure. But if you know for sure that you're kind of closing that chapter and you don't want to use them, most people just discard them. They take them out of the freezer and sometimes they're using them to train other embryologists or laboratory technicians how to handle eggs, freeze eggs, unfreeze eggs. Very rarely people donate those eggs to a friend or a family member who's having a hard time becoming pregnant for them to use.
That's a gift like no other.
That's a cool gift.
If I give you an egg, you have to like give me a lung.
I know. It's really, well, it's essentially an organ transplant, right? You're giving an organ to somebody else that has the potential at life, which is kind of cool. You see it pretty often with sisters. So the common example are one sister is diagnosed with cancer, didn't freeze her eggs, has infertility after her chemotherapy, but then she has a younger sister who's perfectly healthy and has lots of eggs. That sister can donate her eggs to the other sister who can't get pregnant. You preserve some genetic similarity, right? Because then you fertilize that egg with that partner's sperm. That egg donor is related to you. She's your sister, right? It's pretty cool.
That's insane. I never even thought about that.
It's a thing.
Wow. Okay. If this is too forward, I'll cut it out. But did you and your wife go through the IVF?
We didn't. We actually took a slightly different approach. So my wife's a couple years older than I am. She was 6 years older than I am. We met in training. She's a doctor too. And we were like, all right, we're a little bit older. I'm about to be an infertility doctor. We know we want at least 2 kids. It's probably a little earlier than what we would have wanted to do to have kids, but clock's ticking. Let's just start having kids. So we had our first baby a year after being married, and we're lucky enough to have the second baby a year after being married, or 2 years after being married. And we just decided to get after it sooner than we wanted to, so we wouldn't have to deal with infertility or fertility treatment. And for us, it worked well. But for a lot of people, that trajectory doesn't work. That timing doesn't work. And I'm really glad that they have access to fertility treatment. Do you know this about Massachusetts? Massachusetts is a mandated fertility state, which means that if you have commercial insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, your employer is responsible for covering cost of infertility treatment for you.
Really?
Yeah. So the vast majority of people in Massachusetts, if they have infertility, their insurance covers it. That's not true in most states in the country. Most states, if you have infertility, you also better have a lot of money saved up to be able to cover it, because infertility treatment's expensive.
Wow. I didn't even know that. And a coworker of mine was looking into infertility treatments, and she was telling me how expensive it is.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. But she and her fiance were trying for a while, and then they finally got pregnant. She's pregnant now. And
that's the best. Best. Even always best when they don't need us.
It's so good. I was so happy, and it's so good. It's such a good experience. And then I was going to call it a hiccup, which is so inappropriate. Prior to that, she did end up getting pregnant, but her numbers weren't high. It was a numbers.
Early miscarriage.
Yes. And then after that, she got pregnant. We're really happy.
So do you know why that happens?
No, tell
why
me.
Early hiccups happen?
Yeah. Why?
So when a sperm and an egg meet, they have to exchange DNA. All of us have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Remember those little X's and Y's that we all learned about? Sometimes that exchange doesn't happen correctly. That embryo can end up with extra chromosomes or fewer chromosomes. And when that embryo ends up with extra or less, it's not a good embryo. It's not an embryo that's going to be compatible with having a healthy pregnancy. So your body's really smart, and your body's playing defense for you. So as an embryo is ending up inside the uterus, the body's trying to feel out that embryo and say, are you good? Are you bad? Are you normal? And when you don't get pregnant, most common scenario is the body saying, it's not a good embryo. But sometimes the body just doesn't know yet. So it's like, all right, I'm not sure about this embryo. Let it in. Let it implant. And after it implants, the body's like, never mind. There's an issue here. This is not a good embryo. And the body tries to miscarry that embryo quickly, early, to protect you from staying pregnant for many, many weeks or months with something that's not going to be healthy. Make sure that that period of time that you're pregnant and not looking for a healthy pregnancy is as short as possible. So that's why those early miscarriages happen commonly, is the body just playing defense for you, doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Doesn't mean it doesn't suck, right? Emotionally, it sucks. Financially, physically, it sucks. But I try to remind women that it's your body making sure that the pregnancy that you have that is successful is a good one.
Oh my God, you're probably such a good doctor.
But I think sometimes you have to explain this stuff to people, right? Because people think that miscarriage is their fault. There's something that they did or didn't do to cause it. No, most miscarriages are just the genetics were wrong, and your body's doing you a solid.
I'm taking care of you. Like it's always trying to do, but sometimes we don't realize it or understand it. Okay, I have another question about our bodies. I want to know why sometimes we don't find out about an incompetent cervix early enough.
Incompetent is such a nasty word to call someone's body part. Right? Do you know anything for men that we call incompetent? No. Horrible. So incompetent's a word that we gotta let die.
Yeah.
So the cervix is this really cool, interesting organ. It's the connection between the vagina and the uterus. Uterus is this muscle that's about the size of a fist. That's supposed to grow to carry a pregnancy. But the access from the outside world to the inside world, or the door, is the cervix. Cervix is only about 3 centimeters long, looks like a little tube, and it's supposed to be kind of tight. The door's supposed to be closed. For some people, that door can get thinned out, can dilate, can open. And when the cervix is not closed and it's starting to dilate and open, it can increase the risk of inflammation or infection inside the uterus. And the pregnancy is supposed to be in this little bubble, right? It's supposed to be cocooned, protected from the outside world. But if it's inviting infection or inflammation in, it's going to increase your risk of miscarriage. That's unfortunately why people have miscarriages in the second trimester, why people sometimes have miscarriages in the third trimester, early preterm births. The cervix just starts to dilate and thin out sooner than it should. A bunch of reasons why that might be, and we're still trying to figure that out. But it's one of those really crummy things that you hear happen to women sometimes in pregnancy, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's just horrible.
No.
Speaking of trying to figure things out, I want to know how you think AI is going to help infertility in the future.
I have already seen a lot of patients asking the chat GPTs or the Groks of the world, telling them their symptoms. I have irregular periods. I have some acne. I have a hard time losing weight. And I have a little chin on my hair, or hair on my chin. What do you think's going on? PCOS. Yeah, you said it. Yeah. So ChatGPT knows that too, right? And so I think people are coming up with sometimes self-diagnosis. It's pretty good. It's not always right? So it's not just answering the questions correctly. You have to do the testing, do the ultrasound, and like confirm the diagnosis. But I think it's a tool for self-advocacy for patients, right? Like they can start to kind of come up with like what I think's going on. And if you listen to the patient, they'll tell you the diagnosis. I think these GPTs are listening to the patient and trying to come up with something helpful for them.
So you like the advances of AI thus far?
I think it's going to be great. I also think it's going to be a really helpful tool for patients who are looking for questions during infertility treatment when they're trying to decide, do I do the genetic testing on embryos? You can have a conversation with the AI model and they can kind of walk you through what your concerns are, what your questions are. And that's sometimes a way to get more information and spend more time getting questions and answers than face-to-face with a doctor, right? We all have such limited time that we get to spend with patients. As long as the information being conveyed is accurate, I think it's going to be awesome.
What are your thoughts on the ability to be able to, air quotes here, build your baby? So like,
designer baby.
The designer babies.
So this is something that gets, I think, a really bad rap.
I think so too.
Let's talk a little bit about it. So when you do IVF, you make lots of embryos. By design, it's a numbers game. The more embryos you have, more successful you're going to be at finding that embryo that's going to do the job and get you pregnant. How do you sort out which embryo is best? The most common type of genetic testing that's done on embryos is called PGT-A, pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidy. So what that is I'm sampling 2 to 10 cells from an embryo. I'm sending those cells to a genetic testing company, and a week later, company's telling me this embryo has the 23 pairs of chromosomes like me, you, and it's also telling me if there are X's or Y's in there, male or female sexed embryo. That's probably the most common application of genetic testing of embryos. There's nothing designer in there. You're just trying to find the one that's got the normal genetics because we know that one's going to give you the best chance of success. However, there's a couple of different versions of genetic testing that can be done. The second most common is PGT-M. M stands now for monogenic diseases. This is that disease prevention I was telling you about. So if I know you and your husband have cystic fibrosis in common, or your husband has hemophilia, sickle cell, how can I avoid you having a baby with that same condition? I can go test the embryos for that genetic condition. That's a really cool way to design a baby, but really what we're doing there is we're trying to eliminate suffering, improve quality of life for those offspring to not be born with these sometimes really terrible fatal diseases that affect their quality of life and their health for their whole life. Now, people have tried to extend that and push that a little bit further to get to the designer baby thing. The kind of the next big frontier is called PGT-P, and the P stands for polygenic diseases. These are diseases where there's not one gene that causes the illness. This is where there's probably lots of different genes. Things like type 1 diabetes, schizophrenia, artistic ability, muscular ability, intelligence, eye color. This is where people are now trying to screen embryos for these different traits that are not necessarily negative. They're not going to affect your quality of life. It's not going to be a big, terrible disease, but I'm trying to maybe optimize certain things. This is where I think we're getting into that designer baby concern that a lot of people have. I got to tell you, it's not very common. There are a couple of places where people do this, San Francisco, New York City, but in really, really small amounts. But there's always the potential that it becomes more widespread. And I think a lot of us in the field are appropriately worried about it. So it's our job to tell patients that the pros and cons of doing stuff like that, and make sure we point them in the right direction in a way that's ethical and allows us to continue to help people become pregnant in a healthy way without worrying about these ethical concerns.
Let's talk about educating patients for a little bit, because I know that there's a lot of misconceptions around IVF.
Yeah.
And like theories and all those things. So first, I want to discuss some misconceptions that maybe you've come across during the practice, and then things that maybe you'd like some patients to keep in mind, whether they're yours or not.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the two most common misconceptions. One is when to have sex.
Ooh. So
the normal menstrual cycle is 28 days long. From day one, full flow, heavy bleeding, to the next day one, full flow, heavy bleeding. That's on average. Most people are ovulating right around day 13, 14 of their menstrual cycle on average. One common misconception is people think they need to have sex after they ovulate. If you have sex after you ovulate, you're doing the rhythm method. You're contracepting. You're actively not getting pregnant. You want to have sex before ovulation or on the day of ovulation at the very latest. Why? The minute there's sperm inside the uterus, it can live for 3-4 days. The egg, however, can only hang out for around 24 hours. And if there's no sperm around to fertilize it, that's going to go poof and disappear. So you want sperm waiting for it. So I generally tell people, if you have sex on day 10, 12, 14, and maybe even 16, if you have a longer cycle, there's going to be plenty of sperm around whenever that egg shows up. You don't need to have sex every day. You do not need to have sex multiple times in the same day. You can if you want to, but it's not going to make you more pregnant. It's only going to make things a little bit more stress-inducing and less fun for people.
Calculated.
Yeah. So that's one really common misconception. The other common misconception is that people think that they can get pregnant at every age. Can't tell you how many 46-year-olds I see who are like, I'm ready to start building my family. I'm like, great, with whose eggs?
Where are the eggs?
Where are the eggs? So
okay, no, wait, that's kind of me, but not for like my body, but for like other women's bodies.
No, but I think it's important that we kind of talk about where that misconception comes from. You open up People magazine, Us Weekly. You see these celebrities having babies twins at 46, Janet Jackson having babies at 50, Celine Dion. These are all patients. These are all celebrities who are having babies through egg donation, or if they were smart, they froze their eggs at a much younger age. You can't really get pregnant above the age of 44 by yourself. Do we all have an aunt or a distant relative who did it? Yeah. But the chances of getting pregnant successfully above the age of 44, 45, 46 are like less than 1%. You think all these celebrities are getting lucky and getting into that less than 1%? No, they're just not telling the other part of the story, which is how they're building their family at these ages. The best reproductive years, unfortunately, are in our late 20s, early 30s. People still get pregnant in their mid to late 30s, but it's a little harder. By the time you get to 40, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder, but not impossible.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I don't feel like I'm the only one out here that thinks you can just get pregnant at 60.
Well, so here's the thing, though. The uterus is immortal. The uterus can get pregnant at any age. So if you showed up at 51 and said, I want to have a baby and I have donor eggs that I want to create an embryo with, I can give that uterus, expose it to hormones to help create an artificial menstrual cycle to receive that embryo and help someone become pregnant.
It's the eggs.
The eggs are where the ticking clock is.
And women are born with all of their eggs.
All of their eggs at birth.
And then they start to dwindle away.
Dwindle is such a rough word, but biology happens. Normal aging happens. The same way our skin gets wrinkly, our ovaries end up having fewer eggs as we get older.
But men are able to...
Isn't it annoying? They make new sperm their whole life. Every 3 months...
New set.
That's why you see those 80-year-old guys having babies with really young women.
Yes.
The sperm's still there. It's less good. Quality's not as good, and the risk of having genetic issues with that offspring, the child, are a little bit higher. But they're making new sperm their whole life.
Okay, let's talk about something that I want to learn more about, but I haven't done my research yet.
Let's do the research.
Let's do the research right now.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the discrepancies when it comes to Black women or women of color giving birth versus what white women giving birth.
So it comes from a bunch of different directions, right? There's definitely some just ingrained racism in the system. A lot of old white doctors who trained at a very different time, and their treatment and belief and understanding of how to take care of minority women just didn't exist. I like to think that group of doctors is aging out, but it's always going to be there, right? Like we all know it's going to be there. I think some of it, though, has to do with there are differences in disease prevalences in different groups. For example, how many Black women do you know have fibroids? Feels like a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so fibroids are more common in African American women, Hispanic women, even Asian women. They're a lot less common in white women. Some of that's environmental, a lot of that's genetic. When you start to have some of these conditions that exist in the uterus, the ovaries, the pelvis more commonly, it's going to increase the risk of some complications when you try to get pregnant and you try to do fertility treatment, when you try to have a baby. So some of it's definitely there. There are some differences to us. But I think it's probably the best thing that we're doing is we're talking about it. 20 years ago, no one was having a conversation about Black maternal mortality. Now you have a Serena and a Venus Williams talking about almost dying in childbirth. Yeah. You have stories of people saying, like, you have to ask the right questions and you have to be your own advocate. That didn't exist, right? You barely even looked at your doctor in the eye 20 years ago because the doctor was the king. Yes. Now patients are showing up and asking tough questions. And I think all of those little bits and pieces are working together to make the experience safer, more equitable. There's still so much room to grow. Even in Boston, where we have some of the best healthcare in the world, you see a lot of these discrepancies. I can only imagine what it's like in different parts of the country.
Oh, that's so true. That all of it is so true. Yep. All of it. Do you, as well as work in the clinic that you created?
Co-created Terra Fertility with friends.
I like it. Humble king. Do you still deliver the babies?
So that's another misconception. So when we do our 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 4 years of residency, and then 3 years of fellowship, you can't do it all. There are certain things that you give up by becoming a subspecialist. So the reproductive endocrinologist, what I do is our job is to help diagnose, treat infertility. Once we get them pregnant, after about 8 or 9 weeks, they're going to go back to their OBGYN, who's going to take care of them for the next 9 months of pregnancy. So it's a kind of a relationship we have with OBGYNs where we help them get patients pregnant. And once we've successfully gotten them pregnant, they go back.
And they can transition back to their OB.
Their OB, their midwife, you name it, whoever they like to see for their pregnancy.
So you guys are the one that got it started.
We're the ones who help kickstart the process, yeah.
Do you enjoy what you do?
It's the best job in the world. You have a very tangible outcome for every patient that you get to take care of, right? They have something that they will always remember you, the experience, the treatment by, that's tugging at their leg or throwing food on the counter or buying them a Mother's Day gift. And it is so cool to get holiday cards. It is so cool to get she just turned 1, thank you so much, email from patients. And like I said at the beginning, it's the only field of medicine that deals with creating new life and helping bring people into the world. It's a really cool, it's a privilege and it's humbling to be a part of that process in people's lives. It's really cool.
What part of the medical industry is your wife in?
She, drum roll, is an OBGYN. So she's an OBGYN who did subspecialty training in high-risk obstetrics. So she's called an MFM, maternal fetal medicine. So when you have complicated maternal issues, high blood pressure, diabetes, epilepsy, or when you have a baby who has an issue that you diagnose in utero, cleft lip, cleft palate, heart defect, and she's the kind of doctor that sees these high-risk pregnancies and makes sure that that pregnancy experience, the delivery, is as safe as possible. Wow. No, our pillow talk is very boring.
Oh my gosh, to be a fly on the wall.
The thing that we always talk about is REIs have a bad rap. REIs, infertility doctors. 20 years ago, the rate of twins was like 50%. Every IVF baby was a twin baby, right? Like we all got a bad rap. Octomom. Bad rap. In the modern era, the chances of having twins is like 2%. It's so much lower, so much safer. But every time there's a twins or triplets, I still hear it from my wife, like, oh, guess which infertility doctor got her pregnant? Not me.
It wasn't me.
Not me. We like one healthy baby at a time. Not that there's anything wrong with twins, but they're just high risk for moms and babies. So we try to do one healthy one at a time.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think that, be honest, Do you think that your kids will feel pressure to enter the medical field?
None of my parents or my wife's parents were physicians. And it was really cool to not have that pressure of, I have to be like my parents. Both of our parents were in like business. They're business people. I think our kids will probably grow up hearing a lot of what we do at work, and hopefully most of it is positive and good. But I think they'll also see that we work really hard, and sometimes we show up late to stuff, or we get called in for an emergency for something and we're up late answering emails. And for some people that may not be for them.
Yeah.
So I'd be perfectly fine if they were OBGYNs. I'd be perfectly fine if they weren't.
They went backpacking in Europe for 2 years.
Maybe less fine for that.
Maybe a little bit.
I gotta have a job.
All right. Tell this camera where they can find Terra and where they can connect with you, and if they want to talk to you and tell you all their secrets, where they should do that.
If you want to talk about your fertility, you want to talk about freezing eggs, you want to talk about why you're having a hard time having that first or second baby, come see us. We're www.terrafertility.com. We see patients online, via phone, or in person at our clinic in Dedham. And we're an easy, straightforward fertility clinic where we're going to help take good care of you and make sure that you find the success that you want in a way that's approachable and affordable.
You guys go see Dr. Pietro. I'm about to go see him next week. We're about to go freeze something or two.
We can talk about freezing eggs.
See? Not hook, line, and sinker. Okay. I have one last question that I ask all my guests. Yep. So no pressure, but you have to have a really good answer. Okay. So I created this platform so people could learn, because I think knowledge is like the key to everything. So I want to know from you, what is one thing that you wish more people knew? And this can deal with IVF. They can just deal with the world. It's just in general. What's something you wish more people knew?
This is something I think I kind of have grown into as a parent and as a grown-up. Everybody's dealing with something. Be kind. You know, when that coworker shows up in a salty mood, or that person on the other end of the line is just real short and kind of stingy with their words. Everybody's dealing with something, and we all go through it at different points in time.
Yeah.
Be kind, because someday that will be you, and sometimes you'll be on the receiving end, but be kind.
And you'll want that person receiving it to be kind to you, because that's not necessarily your best foot forward, but it's just one of those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it was more profound and I told you some secret about infertility or the womb, but it's just simple human stuff.
The simple things are the ones that stick, though. That's why they've been around for so long. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
I know. We have to have you back.
Whenever.
Yes. I love it. Okay. Thank you for watching if you watched. Thank you for listening if you listened. You can catch Through with a Splash of Tea every Wednesday and Thursday on all streaming platforms and YouTube. Bye now.